Is this some kind of a... Is that a bird?
Your co-host has been dead.
I think I slept for like a really long time and I'm late for a podcast recording, huh?
You're dead. You and your co-host are dead.
That's not good. I better figure out who did this and set things right by interviewing them on my podcast, Nothing New.
Remake podcast, that's right, because the bird normally doesn't talk nearly that much. But hi, welcome to Nothing New, a Remake podcast. I am one of your hosts, Justin Quizon, and with me, rapping at that door is...
Hi, I'm Andrew Linde.
To be fair, I was rapping at the door, but you know. This month we are talking about a film that 30 years ago came out and basically started a new generation of young baby goths, and and the legacy it's lasted since then, and of course its remake in 2024. We are of course talking about The Crow 1994
and The Crow 2024.
This was on our radar for a bit. I think originally the remake was set to come out in June, and then for reasons it was moved to August. And we're covering it in our September episode. Also, it is the 30th anniversary of the original film, so it is kind of a good time to look back on the original and see how the new one stacks up.
But we couldn't do this alone, Justin.
Mm-mm.
We had to bring in an expert on all things Crow. You know him, you love him. We had him on for G.I. Joe many moons ago. Earl Baylon.
Woo!
How you doing?
Yo, what's up, guys?
Welcome back.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's good to be back. Well, the crow is a bird of the genus Corvus. They are one of the larger, avian species. So, yeah. There's many species of crow. There's the pied crow, which is Corvus albus. Corvus benneti, which is a little crow it's based in Australia. But you know.
Or before you go on, I am loving this information. But are you that familiar with also the Crow film series?
There's been a big mistake here.
I kind of sense that. That's fine. We'll roll with it. Anyways. Corvus, you said?
Corvus. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page.
That's fine. Like actual crows, not the movies.
Right. Oh man, what a week! I'm almost like crowed out. I didn't do the watch of all the movies, but I sat down and finally did a good read of the comic book as well.
Same. No, actually, we'll get to that more when we get to the more of the meat of the episode. But before we go on, let us actually talk about the first time we saw the original film. Earl, go ahead. Start us off. When did you first maybe hear of the original film, and when did you first get around to seeing it?
So I don't remember when I first heard about it, but I do definitely think it was probably from like Black Belt magazine back in the day. Being like, taking a lot of martial arts when I was a kid, and Brandon being Bruce Lee's son. I was probably, like, oh my God, he's going to be like in a wide release movie. Because previously there were other releases that were more like straight to video kind of deals. Yeah. But I remember seeing news about it, and I went to go watch it at the Regency 8 in Lakewood on Carson Street. I remember going, and it was one of the first movies that I got in by myself. A rated R movie I got in by myself. I didn't have my parents with me.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, but I was nowhere close to 17. So
they just saw you and went, "Yeah, all right."
yeah. I just looked like it. I've been basically the same like size since 13 or 12. So
you've been perpetually an adult since 13.
Yeah, even the facial hair.
Wow.
Just kidding.
All right.
No. But yeah, so when it came out, I saw it in the theaters, and definitely baby goth afterwards. I mean, it didn't help. I can't blame it all on The Crow, because also Winona Ryder and Beetlejuice was a thing, and Addams Family was Wednesday was a thing. So.
That's fair. That totally makes
Christina
sense.
Ricci.
Yeah. What's that?
But yeah, that's when I saw it. It was in '94 at a theater.
Okay, cool. Andrew, how about you?
Well, I did not see this in the theater. I was way too young, but I definitely, it was something. I think it had to have been in high school. I was, 16 or 17, and someone was like, "Hey, you should watch this." And I don't know if they gave me the DVD or if I found, went and, I don't think I bought it, but rented it or something. But it was definitely one of those watches where I was like, "Oh yes, I get it. Like this is really like good. Like this is like something totally different from a lot of other movies that try to do the same thing."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then even I think that same friend then said, "Now read," or either said, "Read the comic first," or "Now read the comic." It was definitely one of those situations where it was like, "Okay, now you need to read the comic because that's important too." Mm-hmm. And
right.
Yeah, I think I only ever read like the original story. I know, I think the comic artist and writer, he's done more stories and there's other spin-offs and things, but that like original story, and I remember being so, it was one of those first experiences of seeing a comic book adaptation that was like perfect. Where I was like,
it's kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, like the things on the page translated perfectly to the screen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like that experience of like, oh, this is really good. Like this is the way an adaptation should be, and not just, all willy-nilly. I'll say the next time I think I had that feeling in that same, if we're following the timeline of me in high school, the next time that I had that feeling was watching Scott Pilgrim. On the big screen.
Yeah,
was like
totally.
That was like, oh, the comic that I read was now perfectly on screen. Like that was like so insane. So it was like, this doesn't happen very often. So I remember it happening for the first time with The Crow, reading the comic and having seen the movie. I was like, oh, this is it.
Oh, that's cool. As for me, I comic book obsessed as I am now, I was as bad back then in 1994. And so any comic book if I hear of any movie that was based on a comic book, even if I've never heard of the comic book, I needed to see that movie. So this includes, Tank Girl,
Tank Girl, right?
Even movies I knew that were going to be bad, like Steel. I knew I had to see it, even though I knew that wasn't going to be very good.
I haven't even seen Steel.
Oh, well, buddy, you're a lucky person.
What are you talking? Steel's great.
No. But
I think I'm bringing I'm honestly bringing a lot of love for the character from the comics to that movie. Where that movie, I'm being so generous with that movie.
Oh, you are giving massive donations of generosity to that film.
Yeah.
But anyway, I even like I said, like if I hear it's based on a comic book, I just need to see the movie. I was that obsessed with comics and movies at the time, still is. And obviously, also I grew into becoming a fan of Bruce Lee thanks to my brother, and that meant I also became enamored with Brandon, and felt the tragedy of when Brandon was what happened to Brandon Lee during the set. We'll get to that more later. But I knew whatever the case, I had to see the movie. It was rated R, and unlike Earl, I didn't pass as an adult, and so I had to wait till home video. And I the funny part is my brother used to go rent movies with me all the time. He's about a good 10 years older than me, so we would go to like our weekly Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, or mom and pop shop rentals. But he also put a hard line that I can't watch rated R movies, especially when I'm 11. So, the only ones he kind of let it slide was like Terminator 2, because he looked at him, okay, it's just violence, and you watch cartoons, it's fine. But this one, he knew there was a little bit more graphic things that happen in the film.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But that's my brother. Thankfully, my sister didn't think twice of it. So I went to go hang out with, like, my sister wasn't living with us at this time. She was living with her then husband and my nephew, and they had an apartment very close to where I live, so I would just walk over. And one time my sister was like, "Oh, hey, we just bought this movie. Maybe you want to watch it later?" And it was The Crow. And I went,
nice. Did you know you were getting away with something?
Yes, I was. Yes, I totally knew. And it's funny, she didn't even watch it with me. She was just kind of like taking care of my nephew in like the other room, so I was just watching the movie by myself. And I'm like, ooh, I can see why my kuya didn't want me to see this. But I was obsessed. I was obsessed with it after that. Like, I think I drew Eric Draven so much as a kid, which probably would have disturbed somebody if they didn't know what was going on. And
I was totally The Crow for Halloween, like after.
Oh
of course,
my
for
god,
like,
really? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a photo of it?
No, and it was just mainly the makeup, because I wasn't cool enough to wear like what he wears in the movie. Yeah.
But I remember I came up with like fan versions. Like, I came up with like other characters who had who got rebirthed from the resurrected by the Crow, and et cetera, et cetera. So
right,
I was deeply into it for a really long time, and it is. I do point that movie as probably how I got into like Stone Temple Pilots and
oh yeah, that's right.
Right, like that's the single that they were pushing a lot when the movie came out, and my exposure to Nine Inch Nails,
kind of like all the stuff on the soundtrack.
Pretty much, right? Like, totally. It's like, I knew of The Cure because I've heard all the other songs, but that one's like my first exposure to the really moody shit. So,
right.
It turned me. It didn't turn me into like a goth kid, but it got me sort of intrigued by that world. And I will say, my cousin, she was like in high school at the time. She became a goth girl
because of The Crow.
Because I won't say it's because of Crow, but let me just say there was a lot of Crow merch in her room whenever I went to visit, and she was wearing black lipstick and. Like, very, like, okay, she's like the gothy teen kid.
Right.
And she saw it before I did. That's the truth, right? So she saw it before I did, and I begged her, like, tell me, how is it? How is it? Is it good? Is it good? And she's like, and she even gave me a good warning before I saw the movie. She's going like, it's good. I'll just tell you this, like, I know Brandon Lee is like a martial artist. Don't come into that movie thinking he's gonna do a lot of martial arts stuff.
If we're gonna
go
right.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to mention that, I remember watching it the first time and that being kind of a disappointment for me.
Sure.
Because that's kind of what I was expecting.
Right,
but...
especially when you say you saw the first notice of it in like Black Belt magazine. Clearly, you're gonna think, there's gonna be probably a bunch of martial arts sequences, but she kind of prepared me by saying like he's kind of moves more like a dancer. It is like to a degree almost ballet at times, but don't expect like him doing a bunch of like martial arts stuff. I went, okay, so that actually prepared me to see how Brandon Lee was going to do the action when I did get around to finally watching it. So there we go. The plot of the film, in case you didn't pick up. A young rock musician named Eric Draven is resurrected a year after his death and murder from a kind of what seemed at the time a local crime gang that has been, trigger warnings. We will be talking about some really harsh stuff that happens to the main character, Shelley Webster, but she is murdered and raped, and Eric is brought back from the dead by a mysterious crow to avenge the death of Shelley. And that's sort of the basic gist of it. There are a couple other characters, obviously, in the film. There's Sergeant Albright, played by Ernie Hudson. There is...
he's great.
Top dollar.
Oh, yeah.
Ernie Hudson is really doing good work in this movie.
Oh, he's... I think this is the first time I saw him after Ghostbusters too.
Oh, fair. Huh. Yeah. I agree. He is. I think this actually might be other. Yeah, this might be my other film I've seen him after Ghostbusters when I was a kid too.
Right.
He's great in this. I think it's that fine line of like kind of doing the Commissioner Gordon role in a way,
right,
without really doing it completely, but also I think he brings a nice kind of lightness to it, a groundedness to it. He does allow us to kind of be the normal guy in the story without coming off too much as like, what's going on? Like,
and his every time that his superior officer comes by and is yelling at him for some dumb reason, and he's just talking back to him, he's like, shut up. Like, and the superior officer's like, well, this is why you're not a detective anymore, because you suck. You can't solve any cases. You care too much. And he's like, yeah, I care too much. Get out of here.
I know. He's so like whatever about his direct superior. It's hilarious.
Yeah. I kind of love it.
He just withholds information. He's like, oh yeah, it's just stuff in there, I guess, if you want to look, asshole.
I'll say, like, there's a specific scene that Ernie does that I feel like, oh, that's the sign of just how subtly good Ernie is. It's the scene where there's that one officer who she gives her like this file that she wasn't supposed to, and she's clearly flirting with him, and he's just so focused on what's going on with the case, and she leaves and she goes like, and don't tell me you owe me one. And I love how he plays it. He does sort of play like, I only half heard you, but I owe you one.
Right. He kind of does a little, like if I remember, it's like a little smile, but then he's like so absorbed in his work that he kind of just, oh, whatever.
Right.
He goes back to the case file.
Yeah. I even think his like he's the one that we see looking out of the window. This is right after the murders. Mm-hmm. But then he comes down with Shelley, and the superior officer is like, who is this, our victim? And he goes, no, it's Amelia Earhart.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And the superior officer goes, well, I didn't ask what her name was.
God, you're stupid.
Like, oh my God. I was like, the superior officer is
so dull.
Yeah, such an idiot.
Oh my God.
I love the line too where like they're at the apartment in the beginning of the film, and they're like, it looks like we're getting ready to get married tomorrow. And he's like, who'll get married on Halloween? Well, no one now. And I'm like,
right.
Damn.
I think my favorite Albrecht moment is the hot dog. Now you got to put the mustard on the side. Give me that shit. And then he just takes it.
Man, give me more onions, man. Don't skip
more onions. Don't cheap out on the onions. Oh, dude.
Of course we can't mention. Go ahead.
Oh, I forget. I mean, I haven't seen this in years, so it's easy to forget. This is like a secret Halloween movie.
It is.
Night
like Halloween. I mean, yeah.
It feels like it should be obvious because literally it's a guy with face paint on, being gothic everywhere. He's like. But then it's like they literally are like, oh yeah, they were gonna get married on Halloween. This takes place right before Halloween. It's all built into it. I was like, dang, like they really, I don't know. That's kind of smart.
No, they really melt. They really like kind of like that adds more to the kind of gothic vibe of the film. FYI, I do try to watch this on Devil's Night every year if I could.
Oh.
Nice.
Just puts me in the mood. Here's another excuse to watch.
It's definitely a watch. Yeah. It's like a Christmas movie, but like
It's like watching like It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, exactly. It's Wonderful Life for all the sad goth kids. And the theater kids.
And the theater kids.
Probably
Sometimes
the band kids too. Yeah, I know exactly. They're all
the same.
All the same.
I also want to bring up Rochelle Davis as Sarah. Go ahead.
Great young actress.
Yes, she does a good job of just sort of kind of like feeling like a real kid.
Yeah, perfect. Just being real.
Yeah. Like, this is kind of... She hasn't really done much since this movie, but I do feel like she's cool with, like, right. No, this is it. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't need more than that. I'm good. But she's great, and I do feel like, she kind of, there's this balance of kind of like the life that she adds, that you can tell that, like, adds to Eric's life before he passes away. That, like, you can see, it says a lot that, like, oh, Shelley took care of her while her mom was sort of, like, getting pulled into the world of drugs. And
Darla.
And, like, it does add a good amount of backstory, the fact that she was close to Eric and Shelley, that, like, their death added, it, like, without showing a ton of scenes, it, like, their death is lost even when you just meet, like, Sarah for the first time.
Right.
Like the scene where he points, like, the beginning, it's all we're still talking about the beginning, where she's like telling, like, you hear, like, Albright tell Shelley, like, don't worry, Eric is fine, as they put Shelley into the ambulance, and then Sarah realizes, and then he tells Sarah, like, oh yeah,
you lied.
Yeah. But she kind of did it in a way where she's like, yeah, she didn't do it like 11. She did.
No. It was very understated.
Very understated, yeah. But she did do, like, you lied to her about Eric. Yeah, you're lying to me about her. Like, ooh,
well, yeah, she's this character is very much the child that knows too much, like that had to grow too
absolutely.
fast. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense if you think about, like, her mom is Darla, and what she was doing.
And she doesn't even call her mom. Yeah. She says she was calling her Darla every time.
Yeah.
Right. Until that moment.
There's actually a pretty decent amount of folks in this movie. I will go ahead and say, like, I want to call out David Patrick Kelly as T-Bird.
Yeah.
Yes.
T-Bird.
Fire it up.
Fire it up. You and me have done that once in a while, by the way. We're just hanging out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's nowhere else, like, in fiction where the phrase "fired up" occurs. I think it's once you say it one time, it's like, oh, Devil's Night, of course.
Devil's Night, of course. Yeah. Cool. Also, if you're a big fan of the movie The Warriors, David Patrick Kelly is the famous guy who put the bottles on his fingers and yelled "Warriors." So that's still him. I want to call out specifically Michael Wincott as Top Dollar.
Hell yeah, dude. The guy of Gisborne, man.
Guy of Gisborne. What a pull, dude.
He's forever going to be Guy of Gisborne, because just that scene with him and Alan Rickman and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, where the spoon conversation.
Yeah.
Why a spoon? Because it'll hurt more, you twit.
I did not realize that was him.
Yeah,
dude.
That's fun. I think, okay, I want to, if we're continuing down the cast and just weird things, I think he's not used enough, but I like his presence. Tony Todd.
Love Tony Todd.
Oh, yeah, dude. I completely forgot that was him until I rewatched it this past week, and I was like, "That's fucking Tony Todd. Yeah. That's Candyman."
Just a little. Look, I'm a guy who's like, you just give me a little Tony Todd, I'm good. Right. Just throw some Tony Todd in there. Your movie will be a little bit better.
I think on the same vein as John Polito as Gideon. Yeah, the pawn shop owner. Who I think
good.
He's a really perfect, like, character actor. Whenever he shows up in something, you just know you're gonna have a good little scene with him.
Yeah.
And he gets two, kind of, because he gets the pawn shop destruction, and then he gets explaining what happened to his pawn shop. It's just like that. Both times he just has like the funny. When he's explaining what happened to the pawn shop, he has a line where he's like, well, I got beat up and my business got blown up. But other than that, it's been a pretty shit day. He just has like this crazy way of saying it where you're like, what the? It's like the funniest style. And he just brings it. John Polito, rest in peace. He's one of the great character actors.
Between this and The Rocketeer, he really like solidified my early 90s like comic book movie love. I adore. It's the stupidest delivery, but I do think about his delivery of "shit on me."
Shit on me! Shit on me! It's so good.
So many times. I think about that more than I probably should.
Good. I always get hooked on like shit on me and the size of his coke nail. It's like it's massive. I'm like, look at that dude's coke nail. It's like huge. The extended nail on his pinky for like snorting.
Yeah.
It's
oh my god. Yes. So good. So great. And yeah, no, and there's, and I think it's kind of like there's Baylon as Micah.
Baylon, yeah.
Safina Sheena as Shelley Webster. She doesn't get as much due as everyone else, but still worth mentioning. I actually do want to point out, I think my favorite of the gang is Lawrence Mason as Tintin.
Yeah.
Tintin, like, he chews scenery whenever he's on scene. It's
Halloween ain't mañana.
I know. Halloween ain't till mañana. That flavor is not in the comic book, but like that's all him.
That's all him.
It's
he's the one with the knives, right? And he's like, I never miss. And then he misses twice.
Of course, we can't keep talking about the cast until we finally start talking about Brandon Lee himself.
Right.
Brandon Lee, as you pointed out, Earl, at the time he was getting out there. Like, he was starting to pushing himself as a movie star, and he would, he's the stuff he's been in at the time was like, okay, just slowly getting there, slowly getting the attention. He has only two kind of big, Hollywood productions where he was the lead. Was a film first one was called Showdown in Little Tokyo, where he starred with Dolph Lundgren.
Yes.
And his first real leading role is a movie called Rapid Fire.
Oh my gosh, I had a Rapid Fire poster.
Did you really?
I had a Rapid Fire poster. I remember it was orange. It was because there was how back then you had like Blockbuster, and then you had the real video stores where you would go and get all the direct to video stuff.
Yes.
Where you saw all the like horror stuff, like all the horror things that never got theatrical releases. But I had one of those, like a local one we used to go to, and I remember one day he was just kind of giving away posters that they didn't need, and he was like, "Oh, you want this?" And I was like, "Yes, I want that Rapid Fire poster." I don't know where it is, of course.
Of course. I also want to call out one other movie. He did do one film in 1986 in Hong Kong called Legacy of Rage.
I have not seen that.
What's that?
I have not seen that.
Yeah, that one is interesting because that one is kind of like more of a John Woo style film where it's like gun battles than martial arts sequences. It's okay. I think it's worth watching if you just want to see everything that Brandon Lee has done. Especially this is his one time he, much like his father, went back to Hong Kong to make films over there. So it's kind of the one time he did it. I think there's another Hong Kong film called Laser Mission that I've never seen. Or at least it was made in Hong Kong, not really production of it.
Oh,
yeah.
Maybe I had a Laser Mission poster and not a Rapid Fire poster.
Wow. I'm looking at Laser Mission right now, and Ernest Borgnine is in it. And on the poster, his face is superimposed on a diamond.
Oof.
It's like a fake Bond poster, but Ernest Borgnine is the diamond. It's insane.
Oh my God. Incredible.
Oh my gosh.
insane.
It's funny because like all these like the things that you're talking about are it was definitely this period of time where martial arts was still a thing.
Yeah.
So I think Brandon was kind of in that same like miasma as like Don the Dragon Wilson and Mark Dacascos back then. And I think this was like, well, I guess Mark had only the Strong before, but I think Brandon was one that was getting like the big Hollywood thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, yes, let's kind of call it out to a degree. There was a bit of a nepotism situation with Brandon because clearly, hell,
what are you talking about?
Well, you know, the rapid fire trailers are all about pointing out that he's the son of Bruce Lee.
Probably.
And that's and I do remember that very specifically as a kid, that like all the trailers for rapid fire, like the son of Bruce Lee comes to the big screen, you know, that type of stuff.
Right.
And right, you kind of nailed it. That he wasn't quite a Van Damme or a Seagal, right?
Right.
But he was in the realm of a Don the Dragon. You know, and man, I think that shows you and my age. If we know who Don the Dragon Wilson.
The Dragon Wilson, yeah, man.
But like he was definitely in that realm, like you said, Mark Dacascos. Ironic because we're gonna bring him up again later.
Oh yeah, right.
But he was in that realm, and I do feel like he knew that if he probably didn't start, much like his dad, maybe start taking a little bit of control of how he's used in films, he will go further down. And maybe not be as like, maybe not get the kind of films he wants to make. And I think I heard that like with Rapid Fire, him and Jeff Amada actually they took control of the choreography of the film. So all the fight scenes are
nice.
They took care of the fight choreography for that movie. Even the fact that Brandon kind of understanding that he should, acknowledge his legacy, he threw in some Jeet Kune Do in there for that film's fight scenes, Whereas
Jeffy Mott is actually in The Crow too.
Is Amada in The Crow? Is he one of the guys?
Yeah. He's one of the guys at Top Dollar's table.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Now that scene.
Oh, okay. Okay. Pause. We'll get to that.
Let's just talk about that scene now. That's a good scene.
Yeah, that's great. Why not?
Because there's something about that scene that is so like classic in like comic book flavor.
Yeah.
Of like all the bad guys are sitting at a table. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like you only really see that in like Bond movies and comic book things.
Yeah.
And so it's so like just utterly silly. And then it's the other classic comic book thing is the hero, our hero, the Crow is like our superhero here. Mm-hmm. He comes into the scene to fight everybody.
Right.
Everyone.
Everyone all at once. And it's really I think it's really funny how they, he can come back from being injured. And so it gives there's several times where someone thinks, well, I killed him, I shot him, and then he gets right back up and they're all like surprised. But I also watching that scene now, all I could think was like, oh my God, was Christopher Nolan just so inspired? Because this feels like the same scene in The Dark Knight, where the Joker comes to the heads of the gangs.
Oh, I never thought about that.
In the Crow, the funny thing about the Crow is that the head bad guy, top dollar, right? He's kind of Joker-esque in a way. Like he's kind of like doing a weird, like I'm a freak and I'm in charge and whatever. But then the Crow shows up, and the Crow is kind of Joker-esque and like I'm gonna speak in riddles and do things that feel insane, because why would a person want to get shot? So I was like, holy shit, this is we're watching like two different guys doing kind of the same thing at each other.
That's hilarious.
There's it's such an interesting thing you brought that up, because I do remember when the initial looks of Heath's Joker pop up. Yeah. A lot of us all went, oh, so you're going for a Crow-like vibe?
Yeah,
it was very Crow. Yeah.
And so
kind of just the hair drooped, like the kind of damp hair drooped over his face, and
longer
like
coat.
The leather jacket.
Yeah. Longer coat vibe. The fact that his like the makeup is kind of like there's like runny, a little longer lines and such. It wasn't like Jack Nicholson or even Cesar Romero in the comics. It was definitely grungier, you know.
Yeah.
So I didn't think of that comparison, but it's a fair one to look at and go, oh yeah, I guess it's it's kind of similar. But yeah, here's the cool thing about that. I'll go ahead and go with you and stay in that particular fight scene, Andrew. Is that like for the majority of the film, my cousin was kind of right to point out, don't expect an action film really, because there are moments of violence, plenty throughout the movie, but this is like one of the film's actual straight up action sequences. Down to like Eric using 2 guns, like Chow Yun Fat, which I do know like James O'Barr is a big John Woo fan too.
Oh really?
Yeah. If you look at the comic again, there is a shot where Eric in the comic is also using 2 guns. And I'm I'll put a pin on this thought because it kind of has to slight tie with when we talk about the remake. But yes, O'Barr it did admit like, he's a bit of a John Woo fan. So if you look at The Crow, there is elements of that even in this sequence. And yeah, it's like, there are a couple of like martial art like kicks and stuff, but this is, in the use of katana. Put a pin on that. And
right.
But
oh god, the katana.
Yeah, which also is in the comic as well. So like katana,
it is.
The Crow using the katana is just a thing.
Right. It's he's not like an expert with it.
No. He just knows like, I can cut guys up with this, so that's fine.
Yeah, it's like a giant knife.
It's a fucking giant knife. But yeah, this is like one of the film's only real like cool action sequence. That's straight up just a standard action sequence, but still pretty cool. There's still some cool stuff in here. It's not like the best action I think Brandon's done, nor is the best action I think even director Alex Proyas has done, but it's still like you can see like, there's some cool flexes that go on in this sequence. So yeah, I do. It is a time where I'm like, it's almost kind of like, ooh, is it time for the film's like one cool action scene to come up when it gets to this bit.
Right.
Justin, you mentioned director Alex Proyas. What would you say is his best action scene in a movie?
The finale of
Dark City?
Okay.
Yeah.
I've not seen Dark City, but I've seen several of his others, and I don't know if it's just as time has gone on, he's really lost,
Yeah.
He hasn't done much, honestly, right?
He hasn't done much that's also of note.
He did Gods of Egypt in 2016, and that's the last movie he directed.
iRobot.
But he also did iRobot. Yeah, like some strange ones in there.
Yeah. Knowing with Nick Cage. That's another one. I will say, since I brought up Alex Proyas, Alex Proyas is kind of essentially directed 2 of my favorite 90s films of all time, which is this one and Dark City.
Dude, Dark City is a trip, man.
I love Dark City.
Yeah,
it's trip. And Dark City is one of those movies where it's like, oh, this is like one of the greatest. It's on that list of, oh, this is one of those really great comic book movies not actually based on a comic book. Because it feels like a comic book. It feels like a graphic novel, but it's not. There's not. It's like, I remember actually listening to like the commentary of Roger Ebert for that film, and Ebert, after seeing it, he went to the comic book store to go, hey, I'm trying to find the comic that Dark City was based on.
Dark City.
And they were like, oh, that's not based on a comic. And he's like,
that would make sense. Yeah.
He's like, oh, could have fucking fooled me.
The funny thing is, like, for a while there was like a lot of comparisons between Dark City and the first Matrix.
Because there are a lot of weird similar themes.
Similarities, yeah.
Yeah, they both explore elements of reality and etc. Andrew, I recommend. If you haven't gotten around to it, you should. I check out Dark City for sure.
Yeah, I've been aware of it for a long time and just never gotten around to it.
Yeah. It's definitely worth a watch. You're totally right. There were a lot of Matrix comparisons at the time. It's just one of those. Oh, they were just being made similarly near the same time, and they just both happen to have a lot of.
Yeah, they were like really close. Yeah. Like they were probably in production at the same time.
The one things I want to call attention to Proyas' directing is and it's something I feel like is a big pin for later, is that there's a lot of trust in the audience and
there is.
Yeah. Especially in the beginning. Especially when Eric is resurrected. There is a a lot of trust to the audience that you'll figure this out with Eric, without exposition, without a character maybe explaining the rules.
There's a lot of visual storytelling going on.
There's the voiceover at the beginning kind of does the hand waving for you,
right?
And then they're like, now go on, you'll figure it out.
Well, no, like Sarah,
this is your base reality, and then just here go.
Sarah's narration in the beginning gives the film that fairy tale like fable vibe that the movie does have, to allow you to go with it. Like, you're like, oh, okay, and you don't think much of it. You just start seeing the events unfold. You see Eric's resurrection. You see him following the crow. It's all wonderful, awesome visual storytelling that just lets you seep into the visuals and the music and the sound design and Brandon's kind of like perfect performance of a guy who's like, like regain consciousness after being dead. It trusts you so much to go, you'll figure this out.
Right. It's not handholdy at all.
No. Massive pin.
I know. Woo! Oh boy. Okay.
And to kind of add on, one of the things I love about Brandon's performance in the film is that Brandon does a great job of like balancing the humor of the character and the sadness of the character, while understanding that he's a character from a graphic novel. Because there's a thing I remember that Guillermo del Toro said about Wesley Snipes in the Second Blade 2 commentary, is that he said that Wesley knows he's in a comic book movie. So once in a while you see Wesley Snipes pose in a position that looks like a comic book drawing. And Brandon does that to a T in this movie. Brandon knows somehow, like, oh, if I pause like this, that's a drawing. If I stand here, that's something, that's a drawing, like. And I do know that the story goes that him and James O'Barr got very close during filming, that Brandon would hold the comic with the script at table reads. And once in a while they'll talk over the script and etc. And then Brandon will be like, well, why did we change that line from the comic? Just, the comic's line is beautiful. Why don't we just keep that? That happened a lot during the making of the film.
I want to say that, like, Andrew brought this up earlier, but there's kind of not been a lot of comic book adaptations that have gotten the vibe so correct. Between the source material and the adaptation, because I going through the comic recently, it's just like, it's almost like they plucked this character out of the comic book and put him on celluloid. And because the way he talks, the kind of vibe, it's it hasn't been done like that to that level in it happens, but like it's not like, it's a special thing when it happens.
And it's a star-making role for Brandon. That's the other.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the tragedy, really.
Yeah.
The real tragedy is Brandon's so good in this movie. This is the movie that, had he lived, this kind of would have helped break him out of the maybe B-movie action film world that a Don Dragon Wilson was going to stay in, but maybe break into like slightly more air-listing films. And who knows what we could have gotten from Brandon Lee. That's the real tragedy, much like his father.
Yeah, I saw I don't think it was particularly attributed anywhere, but I want to believe it, that Stan Lee at one point was like, well, he could be Shang-Chi, like he was like,
it's right.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like he it was like, he's gonna be the guy, like he was coming up,
right? No, and that's a thing, right? Sometimes you and me, Earl, have talked about this a lot. It's like Asian Americans kind of growing up and finding the representation to latch onto growing up,
right?
And
right.
we were the guys who grew up with like Ernie Reyes Jr., Dante Bosco, Marta Coscos, and Brandon could have, could have been.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
I know. Brandon's mixed as well. Like, he's half Chinese, half Caucasian, but like that doesn't make it any less impactful that I saw Brandon succeed. You know what I mean?
Right.
And my friends who are of mixed race, mixed Asian, they also need that sort of role model as well. And to see, like, I can't help but go like, oh man, imagine if Brandon did Face Off.
Yeah, I mean, there could have been there's a laundry list of movies that came out in the 90s that like where he would have been a pretty awesome, not replacement, but a pretty awesome option for those films. I mean, I could have seen him in, as Neo in The Matrix.
I think him and Keanu share a same vibe.
Right, definitely.
They probably, I can see a version where they could have like.
They're both mixed race.
Yeah, exactly, and they probably could have maybe shared a couple of the same films together. That being said, there is an interesting connection to Keanu in this film. In that, Brandon's stunt double, who ended up having to do replacement filming after Brandon's passed, is Chad Stahelski, the director of John Wick's 1 through 4.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So
that's crazy.
That is fucking crazy. I'm not gonna lie.
I think another thing, about this movie, that part of why it captures people, why it captures our imagination, and why it, is held to such a special place is because of the tragic passing of Brandon Lee.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And because when you read about why James O'Barr wrote the comic and drew the comic,
that too, it's tragic.
He was using it to cope with the death of his fiance from a drunk driver, a completely, a horrible accident that happened to her, and he made this kind of, beautiful little comic, and then they make a movie of it, and then another tragic accident occurs. It's that, I think, has people, that kind of grabs you, where it's like, oh my God, like it's, these things just keep happening. Like it's a horrible accident, and to see that it was like something beautiful was made, and then another great thing was made, and has tragedy tied to it. You kind of, it carries people's, I think, thoughts throughout this film.
I want to kind of hang on to that too, Andrew, because I finally got around, like, me and Earl, looks like we both read the comic this week finally after a while, and
at least most of it. I haven't finished.
Okay. So. I did get a chance to finish it, but like the thing I love about the comic, as you kind of accurately said, Andrew, is that like it reads like it reads as O'Barr's grief put on each page, Every violent moment is his anger towards what happened. Every beautiful moment is him reflecting on what he lost. Every conflict that happens through Eric is what you feel O'Barr is going through. He pointed out in the I have the Crow special edition comic, which is kind of like, I guess the best way to describe it, it's the director's cut of the comic. So that means that O'Barr did some corrections. He included a scene that he wanted to include in the original comic, but he didn't get a chance to for emotional and maybe technical reasons. But he, pointed out that this, it took me 9 years, he said, to make the comic until I finally decided to publish it. 9 years of going through everything he felt and saw through his anger and his grief, and he put it in the book, and you feel it. And when you watch the movie, it's a continuation of those feelings. I think one of the saddest, tragic things to kind of hear about O'Barr after the film was that he said that he made the comic to, because it's not just the fact that his girlfriend tragically died in a drunk driver, is that, as he pointed out in his intro into the comic, what happened was that he was held up at a police station, and they were gonna let him go in the morning. I think he got drunk and he was kind of being angry, and he was gonna go. They were gonna let him go in the morning, but he wanted to go home that night. so he called his fiance to pick him up.
Mm.
That led to the accident.
Oh God, that's the worst.
And if he said in his intro, if I didn't call her, if I just said, okay, honey, I'll see you tomorrow, that wouldn't have happened. Even though that's not fair, right? That's clearly not fair. That's not on him.
Right.
But that's what he felt. What I didn't realize is that after Brandon's tragic death on set, he started having that feeling again. And he went, if I didn't write this comic, if I didn't they wouldn't have made this movie, and we wouldn't have lost Brandon Lee. But what happened was that Brandon's fiance, Eliza Hutton, told...
Whom they dedicated the movie to.
Who they dedicated the movie to. Yeah. She told James O'Barr, very simply, please don't put this on yourself. He loved this movie, and he loved doing it. That's not on you. So... the fact that these things mean something to the added layer of both the comic and the film, it's hard to separate that, you know. Those are part of the reasons that the film and the book means a lot to a lot of people, is that they mean something to the people who made it. You know what I mean?
I think it's it very much comes through in the film.
Yeah.
You know, there's a certain amount of care that's taken with kind of everything. Yeah, honestly.
I mean, if I was Troyaz in the situation, I would be traumatized too. You know, like, how do I finish this film? Like, I'm sure he had similar thoughts as well making the movie, and wondering, oh my God, I have to finish this film. That, you know, did I do this? Did I lead into what happened? But he had to, and he ended up making a film that I think, you know, look, we're talking about it 30 years later, you know, and clearly the impact of the work, because of the respect everyone had, I think it's so obviously there. It's so clearly there, you know.
Right.
It's funny, like, we talk a lot about this. We also didn't mention how good the score is by Graham Revell.
Score's great.
Score's great.
Yeah. It punctuates, like, you know, basically this the film is so much of, like, the atmosphere and the mood of, you know, Detroit on Devil's Night, and, like, every little bit of the creative decisions in the film kind of just lead to it. The way it's lit, the costume design, the art design, all that stuff. And yeah, absolutely, the music is kind of the layer that pulls it all together, I think.
With the combination of, like, the soundtrack, you know, like...
Yes.
It's rare that both the score and the motion picture soundtrack actually add.
Vibe.
They vibe, yeah. That's kind of crazy. Normally it's...
Right.
They don't... Normally they really don't. It clashes, especially in the 90s movies, where it's like, let's throw this song in the movie soundtrack, and you're like, why?
I mean, even now you think about it, like, you have the you have the score for a lot of movies, and then you have a needle drop that's, like, really, like, you know, it kind of doesn't fit with everything else.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, you know. It's kind of punctuating something, but everything in this movie, in The Crow, kind of feels like part of one piece.
Yeah, agreed.
I want to make sure that we talk about, or at least touch on, this idea that I think there's another interesting thing going on with the plot of this movie, where because it starts with Eric and Shelley dying, and his return is only to facilitate, you know, revenge, justice, however you want to view it. The movie is smart to have the Sarah character.
Yes.
Like, we need someone, and the
like
and even
anchor,
the Albrecht, where it's like we need someone that we can follow and have stakes with, and have like to know that part of it is to make Sarah's life better. Like, when, you know, when Eric scares Fun Boy, or kills him, I guess, but and gets Darla to, you know, kind of get off the drugs. It's like that is helping Sarah's life. Like, it is not just about killing the bad guys. It's also about like he's, you know, stopping a drug lord from destroying a city. Like that's kind of it makes the stakes like feel a little better than kind of a generic revenge film would be.
Yeah.
No shade to John Wick. I love John Wick, but you know.
Yeah.
He's just killing everyone. It's just that's what that is. This is kind of like they I mean this movie opens with like the city's on fire.
Yeah.
And it's because of this horrible guy, Top Dollar. And it's like if he can stop that guy, then maybe the city can heal. Maybe the people can heal.
Yeah.
It's funny that you bring this up because like I would say that's like a thing that the movie that kind of has over the comic book is that the comic book is like almost pure revenge, you know? Top Dollar as a character doesn't exist in the comic book in the same they perform the same function as Top Dollar in the movie because he's in the comic book he's just one of the thugs, right? And basically like Eric is just going through this laundry list of people he has to kill. There's no like hierarchy or like no kind of overarching goal for him to do this other than for revenge. And which is like you bring it up, it's kind of different in the movie where there is a bigger picture, right?
No.
So it's interesting that you bring it up.
I like because here's the cool thing. Albright's in the comic, but he's not. He's not.
He's kind of a mishmash of two characters, right?
Yeah, he's kind of a mishmash of the captain, and there's an Albright who, when who Eric meets,
like that beat cop,
at Gideon's pawn shop, which is almost the same exact scene in the comic. It's really cool.
Yeah.
But Sarah is sort of like it's like a redo of a character called Sherry that's in the comic. Sherry is kind of more of an extreme innocent character. She's like a little girl. She's only in it for 2 scenes. She doesn't have any ties with Eric and Shelley. But beforehand.
Yeah.
But I love what they did with Sarah, and I think it adds that emotion to center Eric in the present, you know. Like to have this girl that they kind of treated like a little sister that they both loved. And when Eric is the one that comes back, but not Shelley, it kind of adds to the tragedy for Sarah because, air quote, my brother is back, but not my sister. You know what I mean? Like Eric is back at least, but he has to be very clear that like, it's temporary and I'm not going to stick around.
Yeah, I'm not staying.
Yeah, I'm not staying. But it's and it's not even stated outright. It's just all implied. It's all kind of inferred, and it's beautifully done so that like, you know, Sarah and Eric have like this emotional center of the film that allows like, you know, you to feel that when Eric says I do care, doing the kind of Batman-y pose in the silhouette, but it's beautiful, right. and then Graham's music kind of swells with it, and you feel.
Oh yeah, that's a great little moment.
Yeah. I'm getting teared up even thinking about it.
It's almost as good as Can't Rain All the Time.
Oh God, I think we quote that all the fucking time.
Such a good line.
It's such a good. Well, then it's like, and it's such a good moment where she's like, and yes, it's actually these are lines straight from the comic where she goes, "What are you, a clown or something?"
Right.
And then like he quotes his line, and then that's enough for Sarah to go Eric, and she turns around and he's gone, and I'm like, fuck.
You son of a bitch.
There is here's the thing, like yes, a lot of the film is a great adaptation of the comic, but the biggest change is creating like a Kingpin type character, you know, a main boss guy, which and they restructured Top Dollar to be that character. And I wouldn't say the movie loses itself. I think it's still good, but it definitely has to start wrapping things up. And the idea of the film is that we need to up the stakes if Eric can't get hurt. So they've came up with the conceit that the crow is Eric's tie to the afterlife and to the living, which means if you injure the crow, they've came up with the solution that if you injure the crow, Eric can now be injured. And that's fine. It adds to the stakes, you know, like Eric. Actually, I really love when Eric realizes he can get hurt. kind of forgot how good the reaction was. Where he gets shot, he's like, fuck. And just falls. It's really good.
It's like, wait a second. How?
Yeah. I want to address a character very quickly, and we'll put a pin on him, that is not in this film, and he was cut out. The character is called Skull Cowboy. Skull Cowboy is a character that's in the comic, but he's not in it a lot. He's only really in it in certain scenes. He's not a character. Maybe he is in the early editions of the book, but he's not like a full-blown character. He's kind of there because there's a lot of like symbolism in the comic, and the character of Skull Cowboy, who's never really named in the comic, you identify him because he's a skeleton in like a cowboy outfit.
Yeah, that's just like a cool visual.
It's like a cool visual, but he's not like a character. But in the early version of this film, he was a character. He was actually played by actor Michael Berryman, and his role was deleted from the film after Lee's death because I think there were just too many scenes to cut, that relied on Lee to be involved still. If you look up, there are like chintzy YouTube clips of these scenes with the audio being trash and etc. But it exists. You can look it up and find it.
I'm sharing in our recording space an image of what the Skull Cowboy would have looked like.
You are?
It's it's a pretty good look, I have to say. I wouldn't have hated this, but this is where it kind of crosses that comic book line,
right?
Like, fully.
And
I think the movie has all the elements, but it just doesn't have a guy like this, and a guy like this just makes it
right,
crosses that line.
But I also think
it goes full comic.
Comic, but it's very clear you don't need him. Like you don't need this character at all. Like even if Brandon was alive to finish it, I would have made that note and went, "Do we need this? We probably don't." It's kind of turns the film more subtle because of it. We don't have to hear. We don't need somebody to explain shit.
Especially if they're going to explain it wrong.
Pin now. Dang it.
We'll get there.
I know. Oh, I know.
Oh my God.
I think that means we're coming to the end on talking about the 1994 Crow. A great movie.
It was great. I need to get it on 4K.
Oh my God, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Yeah?
I love the 4K. It's beautiful.
Nice.
All right. So we're gonna get back in our coffins. And then we're gonna get resurrected again 30 years later. We'll see you then.
To all who come to this happy podcast, welcome.
Animusings are your musings.
Here age relives fond memories of the past.
And here youth may savor the challenge and promise of the future.
Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Kayla.
And if it wasn't readily apparent from that, we're huge nerds about Disney. That's why we're doing the Animusings podcast.
Once a month, we'll sit down and talk about a film in detail from the Walt Disney Animation Studios filmography, covering them in chronological order, from Snow White to Moana and beyond.
To Moana and beyond!
Sweetie, we're not doing Pixar yet. We'll do that after.
That's gonna be a long time coming. Anyway, if that sounds up your alley, come join Kayla and I, and maybe a guest or two, as we explore the Disney animated canon, film by film.
With the hope that it'll be a source of joy and inspiration to all the world.
Ooh, nicely said.
Don't thank me, thank Walt.
Oh, it's a little tight in this coffin. I guess we just have to wait until a bird comes by and then we can bust out, huh? That's how this works. The good thing I brought Patreon. Patreon.com/nothingnew, and we can listen to a little clip of the new Patreon exclusive episode right now. I don't know how else to say it. Like, they do a lot of setup. It's the pilot, so it has to do a lot of setup. But
it's kind of a speedrun version of the movie too.
Yeah, they speedrun it, but they also like don't do the things that the movie does. Like, he doesn't kill anyone.
Yeah, well, that's one of those weird TV show things, right?
Yeah.
They decided that he doesn't kill anyone, but he does, like, seek out justice. But I feel like that maybe is a little off. Doesn't really fit the vibe.
Yeah.
All right. We're about ready to head out and unbury ourselves again. But yes, if you join us on Patreon, along with the rest of our patrons, you can get a large library of Patreon exclusive episodes for only $1. You get years of episodes that only exist on our Patreon. They have not been posted onto the main timeline. So episodes like, let's say, we compare Halloween H2O and compare that to Halloween 2018. That's only on Patreon. We also do a special Patreon for folks who are willing to do for 1 month, pay $25. That person gets to control the show for that month. They tell us what to cover, and we'll cover it. We have done several episodes to this situation. We have done King Kong. We've done Power Rangers. Recently, last month's episode, we did The Lady Killers. So, those episodes wouldn't exist unless you, the wonderful listener, wants to throw us $25, and we will be under your control for that month. Anyways, that's our Patreon. Please join us there and get ready to listen to more special episodes, including the one that we talked about this month. Before we go on and get our revenge, Earl, folks, Earl's here.
What's up?
Here, by the way, please tell the folks where they can find you and what you got to plug.
There's no air in that coffin.
Yeah, sorry, dude. Sorry.
Well, you can find me everywhere online at Early Be Good. That's EARLYBGOODE with an E at the end, like Johnny Be Good. That is my handle everywhere. On Twitter, Threads, all the things. What can I talk about coming up? The only thing I can talk about coming up, because we're on strike, is
right. It's the video game strike.
Yes, the video game voice actor strike. Currently on strike, so I can't talk about those things. I do have an animated show coming out on Netflix in October called Tomb Raider: The Legend of Lara Croft, where I have the good fortune to reprise my role from the earlier games. But yeah, that's coming out. Looking forward to that. I think it's in the first part. It is in the first part of October. So if I remember,
October 10th.
10th. So
check it out.
That's happening, and that's all I can talk about.
Which is like interesting, kind of roundabout, because you're not talking about the game. You're talking about the cartoon based anyway.
It's weird, right? I should double check just to make sure. But like honestly, it has nothing to. Well, I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of a gray area, isn't it?
Anyways, also, I guess we can always lean back to this. Earl, you're also an associate producer and one of the leading actors in our film Olympia with a Vengeance. So you can still see us. You can still see you there, available on. I don't tend to plug our movie, but that's always safe to plug.
That's available everywhere you can download films. So, I personally am a Fandango at home guy. But it's there, Amazon, iTunes. We have been out for technically 4 years now, right? Yeah, I guess that's when we did our festival run. But in addition to the movie, we also have comics, which of course Justin is writing a few of the stories there, and so come see us at the next con, whatever that is. WonderCon, Comic-Con. I don't know what we're doing next.
Well, this is coming out. Well, I don't know. Maybe
LA Comic-Con.
Yeah, we might be there at LA Comic-Con. We'll see. Just stay tuned. We'll stay tuned to our socials, and we'll let you all know. All right. So, before we dive into the Crow 2024, I, want to point out there were, of course, several movies. since the first one.
Mm-hmm.
It did do well. That they, of course, Hollywood is never shy to make a thing a franchise. There have been, not counting the new one, there have been 3 other Crow films. We have The Crow City of Angels, which came out 1996. The Crow Salvation, which was straight to video in 2000. And The Crow Wicked Prayer, which came out also straight to video in 2005. I only saw one of these movies. And that's Crow Wicked Prayer, and the only reason I watched it was because the director of Six String Samurai, a film I really, really love, did the Crow Wicked Prayer. Let me tell you, he didn't. Well, that movie ruined his career. So,
oh no,
yeah. Anywho,
now I will point out the Crow City of Angels is kind of a direct continuation.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do have a grown-up Sarah.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's kind of a RoboCop 3 situation. So if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. It's kind of not worth it.
Yeah, Anyway.
RoboCop 3. I saw it in theaters.
Ooh. Really?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I couldn't convince anyone to take me to RoboCop 3.
We only saw it. I remember going, and we decided to do it because we had free tickets. But and I do not even remember the film at all. So,
anyways, yeah, there have been 5 of these movies, and counting the new one that came out this year. I also want to point out this new one has had a hell of a production journey.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Massive. Long.
It's
endless.
More storied than I thought it was. I read the Wikipedia and I was like, how can it change? How could it have changed hands so many times?
I want to point out, and I counted the IMDb today just to double check. There are, because I noticed this in the opening credits, a lot of executive producers. I decided to count, and as far as IMDb is concerned, there are 25 credited executive producers.
That's got to be unheard of. That's got to be unheard of.
That's got to be a new record. Oh my god.
They also have that kind of way too many production company logos at the start. Where that's how you know it's like, oh no, there was trouble here. Everyone had to get a hand on this one, huh?
And I don't even want to go through the amount of people, like each detail. I'm just like, from Stephen Norrington, who directed Blade, to frickin' let me see here, like Corey Hardy. I don't even know who that
Corey
is.
Hardy,
as a filmmaker. Like, it just insane amount of people were thinking, or were considered, or were involved in directing. Nick Cave was brought on to rewrite the script. Like, and if you want to talk about actors, holy shit!
Yeah,
dude. Like, anyone who was young enough to be considered, they considered. In 2010, you want to think about Mark Wahlberg? They did.
I know. I was like, Wahlberg? Wow.
Channing Tatum, Ryan Gosling, James McAvoy, they were considered.
Bradley Cooper at one point.
Bradley Cooper, yeah.
Tom Hiddleston was like in some of the early artwork. Luke Evans was in fact cast in 2013.
That's wild.
Oh, Alexander Skarsgård.
Yes.
Yeah. Isn't that
ironic.
Wild?
They just had to. They're like, wait, hold on. Do you have a brother?
Let's get another Skarsgård. Skarsgård tag out.
It was Momoa was the one that I thought got the farthest, right?
Momoa was pretty far. He was in fact the last one until he eventually left. I want to point out one thing that's from Wikipedia, and I do find this fascinating. In 2014, James O'Barr actually did sign on to co-write the script for the remake.
What year? 14?
2014. So he
a full 10 years ago.
A full 10 years ago, he did say he pointed out his approach, as I think from an interview here a while back. He says, "We're not remaking the movie, we're readapting the book. My metaphor is that there is a Bela Lugosi Dracula, 1931, and there's a Francis Ford Coppola Dracula, 1992. They use the same material, but he can go two entirely different films. This one's going to be closer to Taxi Driver, or, as I stated earlier, he's a fan, a John Woo film. And I think there's room for both of them. Part of the appeal of the Crow comics, after all, is that they can tell very different stories. So he decided, I'm going to try to get in on this, and maybe I can help fix it, or at least create the, the hope that he can kind of be the center of it. And it's very clear that he hasn't talked about the movie since, and he's very clear he's definitely, as far as I'm concerned, outside of probably paying him for the rights, he is not involved with this one.
Yeah. Another weird one. At some point, Jack Houston was considered to play the Crow. They just, I think they had a cast, and then they said, "Do all of you have relatives we could actually use?" Instead of
is Jack in fact related to Danny Houston? Is he?
Yeah, I think so.
That's his father. I'm gonna double check.
Or his uncle or something. They've got.
Oh my God.
I think they are for sure related.
Does
that mean is FKA Twigs Jason Momoa's niece or something? What's going on here? What happened?
Playing hot potato with this movie.
Danny Houston is in fact Jack Houston's uncle.
Yeah. I
didn't know that.
This is just nobody actually wanted to be in this movie, and everybody thought, well, I'll sign on, and hopefully it goes away.
God, Jack Houston's one of those guys who I'm trying to go what was his appeal? Because he's in Boardwalk Empire. That's where he got a lot of attention. That's fair. Yeah, they threw the ones that I can see. I guess I could have seen Tom Hiddleston do this. I think that would have been fine.
I could see Momoa do it, but it would just be an entirely different movie.
Entirely different film.
Yeah,
entirely different film. But here's the thing, and before we go on to the nitty gritty of this remake, part of my big problem as I'm watching this new one is that I'm sitting here and going, maybe you shouldn't have named them Eric and Shelley.
Right.
Oh, that's a start.
That's probably my biggest problem with it is that these aren't those characters. Look, you've made 4. Just call them something else. Just go ahead. He's the new Crow. We don't need. They don't need to be named Eric and Shelley. They don't embody those characters.
The funny thing is too that they've kind of avoided mentioning or erased their last names.
Yeah.
From the movie. So Draven doesn't get mentioned anywhere, and Webster doesn't get mentioned anywhere. Right.
No, and to be fair, Webster and Draven are a 1994 invention, because in the comic it's just Eric and I think her name is Shelley Weathers, because her dad's named Mr. Weathers in one of the pages in the comic. So it's Draven is a comic idea, which is awesome because it makes it more comic. It's a movie idea, which makes it more comic booky in my eyes. Because it's the Raven, Eric D. Raven.
I know, right?
This movie does more than erase their last names, though. It erases characters entirely. There's no Sarah. There's no Officer Albrecht. There's really,
none of the T-Word Fun Boy.
None of the main gang guys.
The setting is now, where the hell is this?
I have no idea.
Well, it's vaguely European. I think that's the idea. These are we've switched over. It's not Fun Boy and Tintin because that's gritty street people. This is we're now into Euro trash. We're now into they're wearing suits, but they're acting like the guys from Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
So it was actually filmed in Czech Republic and Prague, so very Euro
Okay, that kind of makes sense because it kind of looks like that.
Bill Skarsgård is Swedish, but I don't know what he's doing with his voice in this movie. There's sometimes it sounds like he's speaking very naturally, and then other times he's speaking like with a weird high pitched voice that I don't understand.
Yeah.
So that was troubling. Also, welcome back to Bill Skarsgård. We haven't talked.
Oh yeah, hey Bill.
Yeah, we talked about him with it the way back in episode 4.
Episode 4. Yeah, that's right. Yes, because we covered it in 2017.
Yeah,
he hasn't made an appearance. He hasn't been made an appearance in our show since then.
And we'll be talking about him again, not too long from now, in another kind of iconic makeup role.
Again.
Oh gosh, I know, right?
God, that's just his thing. That's the only way we allow him on the show is he wears makeup on some fashion.
Do you think that was like a big reason why they wanted him for The Crow? Is because they saw him as Pennywise and they went, well, this guy can do clown makeup.
That's being generous.
Because I can't think of one other reason.
Yeah, this was an interesting year where Bill Skarsgård was trying out to be an action hero.
Yeah.
And I didn't see the boy who killed the world.
I didn't see that. I totally forgot about that film.
Yeah. I think you did, Andrew. No. Did you see that one? No.
He was good in John Wick 4.
I did like him in John Wick 4.
And the thing about his character in John Wick 4 is he's not an action guy. That's where he gets got. He is the Euro trash that is trying to kill John Wick and does not know how to fight and tries,
Mm-hmm.
That's where he fits better.
I want to ask Hollywood a real quick thing. Do you mind give me a minute? I just want to do a little rant to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hi. It's Justin. I would like to ask a request. If you could avoid putting Danny Houston in any more comic book adaptations, I would have greatly appreciated it. I don't think he's a bad actor, but I do think his track record is 3 for 3 for me right now. Wolverine Origins, where he was where he was very boring in that movie, as William Stryker. Also makes no sense that he's the younger version of Brian Cox. That makes no sense. How did he lose inches? Anyway, then he also was like the extremely forgettable bad guy in Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
Which Wonder? He was in Wonder Woman?
See?
He was one of the Germans?
Yeah.
Dude, I don't even...
Earl, that's... You're proving my point. And here, once again, he's extremely forgettable here. Don't put him in any more comic book movies. Just, I beg you. I am pleading with you. He's not
also,
good for them.
This character is not good.
I mean, I'll get to that. I was getting to that, but yeah. Character kind of sucks. Here's the thing with the original movie and the comic, right?
Right.
The comic plays with the comic is the idea that the gang is a random gang, like they're just
right.
They're just a random gang that drives up to Eric and Shelley, In the movie, they kind of had to create a larger, like, kind of canvas for the villains. So they decided that they created a boss for them. So that's what Top Dollar is,
and that there was, like, Shelley had, like, complained to the housing board.
Right.
So there was that whole thing. They created kind of like this housing thing.
Yeah, and that's fine. That still kind of keeps them in like more like a crime, like a standard crime stuff.
Right. It was kind of a grounded world, yeah.
Right. With Eric being kind of the only like magical, like fantastical thing. The Crow franchise seemingly plays once in a while with creating a supernatural enemy for the characters. And this is one of those cases where they tried that again, and it's real stupid because I don't understand him.
It's so incredibly stupid. When he first did his demon thing, I went,
this is wrong. Dune voice? Yeah. What was the idea behind that? Was it watching too much Dune? I don't
know. He just and it's like, okay, so he can just whisper a thing in someone's ear and then they kill or whatever.
Right.
It's like,
right.
Oh, okay, so why, like, just do that? Like, what do you? I don't know why.
And
yeah.
Why don't you just do that to everybody? Like,
the moment, and I was watching the film last night. The moment I really sat there in the theater and went, "This is stupid," is finding out that Shelley, the reason she was running away and she couldn't tell Eric what she did, even though she didn't really, is that there is incriminating video footage of Shelley being possessed by Rogue to kill a random person. But also, I'm sitting there like, so some motherfucker was shooting on an iPhone? Like,
right.
this murder scene?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a classic situation of, like, why were they filming?
Why were they filming?
At one point, Rogue says to one of his, I think it's to Marion, his number 2, you know?
Yeah.
He's like,
Right.
I need that video. If it gets out, then who knows what they'll do to me. I'm thinking, once we actually see the video, you don't do shit, dude. It's Shelley who kills someone.
Yeah.
Why would he be worried?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because do we hear the voice on the video? All we see is.
I don't think so.
They
also, but the way when Bill Skarsgård first watches the video, he reacts as if he'd seen the most like disgusting, horrifying thing ever.
It's a huge
And then
reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they show us the clip, and it's just like she just stabs him or stabs whoever it is, and it's just like, okay, at this point, dude, you've done worse than that.
Right.
And let's talk. And I know I'm gonna let you go all in on this, but I want to bring up okay. So you're telling me that part of the new rule, there's a character in this film called Kronos who is essentially the over-explainer of the rules character.
He's the Skull Cowboy.
He's the Skull Cowboy, and I hate him. I hate him so much
because he doesn't make any fucking sense.
It doesn't make any fucking sense, and like. He points out, like, they added so many new dumb rules. One of them is the fact that, like, I guess if Eric ever at one point loses his faith in his love of Shelley,
oh god,
he doesn't get to have his healing abilities.
They had to do a little Spider-Man 3 energy in there.
She's lost the will to live. Dude, it's I mentioned this earlier, like off the recording, but like it's kind of the problem of like soft versus hard magic systems, right? Like if we're talking about like narrative, like a soft magic system, like an extreme soft magic system would be like Lord of the Rings, you know, Gandalf. We know that he's magical. We don't know what he can do or the limits of his powers, so we can't really predict, you know, what the outcome of anything he's going to do is. Then something that's like on the opposite end is something like a Bryan Sanderson novel, or like more something more popular, like Avatar. Avatar: The Last Airbender is like a hard magic system. You know, we know there are 4 elements. People can only bend one of them, and they only have limited control of it, unless you're the Avatar, and then the Avatar can, you know, has control over all 4 and can go into the Avatar state, right? The problem is, and it exists along a continuum, right? The problem is the more you shift towards hard magic with like fixed rules, the more you have to explain.
Yeah.
Because you can't just create a rule or do something and then and not explain how that fits into the rules. So if we're talking about the difference between the 94 Crow and the and 2024, right? In the old one, we just knew that Eric came back from the dead. It had something to do with the Crow, and his immortality was inevitably tied to the Crow somehow.
Yeah.
But in terms of his powers, we didn't know what he could do. He did a lot of different things. He was able to like transfer memory or siphon memory or siphon emotions. Apparently, like evacuate drugs from Darla's bloodstream, but it's all kind of wishy-washy.
Right.
But it still works because it's vibes, right?
Right. No, 100%. Yo, totally true. You're right.
And then we go to 2024, and then all of a sudden we start putting rules on everything. So, like you brought up, no, your love of Shelley has to be pure. You cannot doubt her. And one of the weirdest things to me was like, after he dies as the Crow the first time, Kronos goes like, you're gonna up. I don't know what he does. I don't know what the message is. He has to level up his crowness by making a sacrifice of himself, and then he's able to pass through life and death. Like who? I don't know, but he says that now you're going to be able to pass through life and death. I thought he was able to do that before.
Yeah,
So it's just the more rules you put on something, the more people have to room to question, and more things, the more chances there are things. For things not to vibe or to so I don't know, it's just all over the place since one new one.
The thing with Kronos too is that it seems like every scene that he's in, every time that Eric goes back to that limbo space,
right,
Kronos is like, oh, I have to, he like makes up a new thing. Like it's just like the first time
it's so Eric weird
there, Kronos is like, oh, you're not supposed to be here. They don't expect us to wander around like this. So it's kind of like, oh, this is another guy who's just wandering in limbo. Great. Then he goes back into, first Kronos Doctor Stranges him. He hits him on the forehead and he travels dimensions or whatever. But then when he comes back again, then Kronos is like, it's like, this is Kronos' house. Like Kronos is like, it's like, yeah, I just live here. And then by the third time he shows up, he's like bargaining with Kronos, and Kronos is like, I'm not in charge. And then when he comes,
who is in charge?
Yeah, he's like, I'm not in charge. And then Eric, whatever the deal is, he's like, I'll trade my soul for hers. Kronos turns around and he's like, you got a deal. It's like, wait a second, you just said you're not the guy who makes the deal.
Right.
How the hell? How are you the guy who makes the deal now when you literally just said, I don't make the deal?
It's such a mess. The entire, like, I don't know, man. I just sat there confused for a lot of it. Like, wait, you just said something else. But, I mean,
every time he went back to Kronos, I was like, here we fucking go. This guy again.
And I fucking hated the conceit to getting him back to Kronos. It's like, it's like a water thing. Why? Why is it water?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Water. I was so confused by why they decided water would be a big thing in this movie when it's called The Crow.
Right.
Crows don't do shit with water. Like, do something in the air. Do something with feathers. I don't know. Anything. Like, anything else makes sense. Like, this just didn't make any sense.
They didn't tie anything into the Crow other than the Crow carries your soul. And that was kind of it. He kind of follows the Crow through several things. He doesn't like adopt any of the mannerisms or like take it as a symbol or whatever. It's just.
Well, he did have a back tattoo that referenced, like, had lyrics about flying and being a bird or something.
Jesus Christ.
We haven't even talked about how he looks in this movie, which is horrible.
Oh, let's go into that. Let's go into this. You brought up a certain actor that I'm not a fan of.
I made a note in our notes where I said, because he's why does he look like Jared Leto Joker? Why is that?
He does absolutely looks like Jared Leto Joker. Yeah,
and it's down to like the weird tattoo on his heads and like the chest tattoos, and I'm just I don't get it. Here's where folks if you are the fan of the professional sport of wrestling, I actually sent you guys photos of another weird comparison that I couldn't help myself from thinking. There's a wrestler, very famous, 90s all the way up to the, he just retired this year. A wrestler named of Sting. Sting got very popular when around the 90s he decided to dress up as, well, fuck it, the Crow.
Right. Totally. Was he joke? Was he trying to kid anybody? I mean, like...
no. It's the story goes. I kid you not. This is one of my favorite weird wrestling stories. That there was a wrestler named Scott Hall, I think his name is, and he was hanging out with the guy, the guy who plays the Steve Boren, who's I think his name, the real name of Sting, and he's like trying to figure out his new look. He wants to change the character up, and just out of nowhere, Scott Hall's like, you know what, dude? You should make him look like the Crow. Just straight up said, just fucking do it. Just do the trench coat. You have long hair now. Do the white makeup. Just even if they wasn't gonna stick with it, just do the Crow.
Right.
And apparently Sting like heard that, kind of loved it, and then when he made his first appearance on WCW looking like that, people lost their minds, and he basically,
I'm sure,
he looked like that for pretty much the rest of his career. Like the only time he changed it up was around the early 2000s, like 2010 maybe, where he did start looking like, not ironic, he did intentionally start looking like Heath Ledger's Joker. So he like started doing more of that makeup. He eventually moved on to AEW, which is where he's been at for the last 4 years, and he just retired this year. And I bring this up because Sting kind of had a protege in the last couple years. There's another wrestler who was coming up, and they became kind of like a duo. And in a weird way, it almost looks like Batman and Robin. And the new wrestler is a guy, the current wrestler that he's been teamed up with the last couple years, his name is Darby Allin. Darby Allin is a very skinny dude who has a half makeup that's white and black that's smeared on, and he wears a big pink fuzzy jacket once in a while. And immediately, my two thoughts of looking at Skarsgård's Crow is, not only do you look like Jared Leto, you look like Darby Allin.
Wow.
You look like the other guy who looked like the Crow, but not the right Crow.
Oh my god. Sorry, were you gonna?
No, go ahead. I got.
Can we talk about how much time the movie spends trying to convince you that like these two are in love?
A lot.
I want to say, yes, I agree. This is really bad. But when you're looking at like story wise, like I think, Justin, we've seen this in remakes a lot, where what someone wants to do in a remake is they say, look, in the original, they killed the wife, the girlfriend, the fiance in the first minute. What if we had her stick around and like gave her more of a personality? And time and again, sometimes it works, but a lot of times it does not work, because the trope works better than trying to give these people a personality that doesn't fit.
Yes.
I'm thinking specifically of Firestarter.
Yes.
Yeah, Firestarter, they do it, and it kind of drags out that whole sequence. You know,
I never even who was the Firestarter, the new one?
It's Zac Efron.
Zac Efron was the dad. I don't remember who played the daughter.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, the daughter's of new note, but yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great example of that, because this movie
so this is, I think this is following that instinct of like, look, let's do justice to showing their love. You know, like the original Crow opens with them dead, and we only see Shelley through flashbacks. Right. They're like, here's our chance. We'll give Shelley a whole plot line. We'll make her a person. And then you get her, and she's like this, and we all just go, what the fuck was that?
Andrew?
It was bad.
Oh my gosh.
No, yeah. And this isn't really to blame on FK Twigs. That's not really.
No, it's absolutely not her fault.
No, if anything, she does about as best as she can do with what she's given.
I'll be the single dissenter. I didn't like her performance at all.
It's fine. Fair. I'm not saying I'm in love with it, but I don't hate her. I'll be honest. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yes, you're right. In terms of what they're trying to do, it's too much.
It really is too much.
Yeah.
And to compare it to like the 94, even though in the initial judging of the two films, they were judged, you know, I was trying to divide the two as much as possible, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just look at the 2024 movie as a film on its own.
Sure.
but like the more you watch it, as soon as like the entire thing goes to shit, you sit there and you start wondering why. And and the big thing for me was that like especially after doing the watch of 1994, was that you brought it up earlier, the old film, the original film, doesn't do a lot of hand holding. It doesn't do a lot of like explaining through like exposition in dialogue. In 2024, it's nothing but dialogue.
Yeah.
There's nothing but dialogue. Every scene is like super wordy. There's no subtlety in anything. Mm-hmm. So like all we see is the entire time is like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. But did I tell you I love you? And we get that for like, I don't know, I want to say 45 minutes.
Right. It felt like 45 minutes, even if it was shorter. And
right.
And like it's like you all keep saying is like they keep trying to tell you how much you're supposed to care for them, and I'm like, but I don't. Like, right. It's like I think I don't really see why, and especially because the fact that the relationship is 0 to 180. You know, they meet,
right. It's super fast. It's like Romeo and Juliet, dude.
Which again goes back to the whole. Well, why even bother? Calling them Shelley and Eric. You might as well again if you want to do this type of story, but add the Crow lore to it. Yeah, just make new characters.
Right.
Just make them new characters.
Right.
So then that allows me to separate even further. But even then, it still doesn't fix the writing of them. But it doesn't makes it more frustrating that they're named Eric and Shelley. You know.
Yeah. Right.
And I think, yeah, it takes so long for us to get to the actual Crow stuff. To the actual like, oh, he's resurrected.
The Crow part of the Crow.
Yeah, the Crowacity of it all. And like
another thing. So this film does not follow. I kind of want to call it the Crow formula. Which after having watched all the sequels, even the sequels give up certain elements pretty easily.
Sure.
But something that is in the first one and not in any other is that Eric doesn't come back for a full year.
Yeah.
He's dead for a
Right.
year, which I think is so crucial to what makes that first one so interesting, is that everyone knows that he's dead.
Right.
Right.
And when you have a character who dies in a way where only like one or two people know, and then they come back, it's not as shocking. Like, they should show up to someone and they should say, oh my God, you died. But because this film, he dies in a way that is like not so graphic. And then he just comes back kind of immediately. No one is like, except for the people who killed him, I guess.
Right.
They're like, oh, you're dead. Only one of the Crow sequels did that, and they didn't even do it that well. Where he was on death row, so he died in the electric chair. So it was very famous that he died. But it's like you kind of need that, where it's like this man is a ghost.
Yeah. And
people are aware of that and are kind of freaked out by it.
No,
and this movie has none of that.
That's one of my favorite, favorite moments in the original film when T-Bird's getting all like tied up, and he starts realizing this is the guy they killed a year ago, and he's like, "You're not supposed to be doing. No, we killed you. No, you're supposed to like that freak out of like, no.
There ain't no coming back.
Yeah, there ain't no coming.
There ain't no coming back.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, that adds to what's happening to them,
and then the additional layer that because the bad guys are demonic already, someone coming back from the dead is not really going to shock them that much. They're just going to go, I guess we need to use more demonicness now.
Yeah.
And that totally happens because they look at Rogue looks at Eric and he's like, I want that power.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I don't fucking care.
yeah, but why do you want that power? Honestly, that's another thing. Like, Rogue has no fucking like, he has no motivation, right? Like, what is that guy want? Like, Top Dollar, we knew what Top Dollar wanted.
Yeah, simple, but we knew what he wanted.
Yeah, exactly. It existed. Not so with Rogue. What does he want to do? Why is he doing all these things? Why is he making people kill themselves? Or kill other people?
Yeah, no, it's... And also...
Yeah, it's unclear.
Yeah, it's unclear.
Just for the shits of it, I guess, but that's not that's not cool enough to be interesting.
The decision of also kind of having this Eric almost weirdly have like a learning curve for his healing. Like, it looks like it takes him to heal longer, and means every healing is painful. Which I'm like, that doesn't work here. It just adds scenes, it adds an annoyance to this version of Eric. When Brandon gets shot as Eric in the original film, it's, the way I describe his character is that he doesn't have a care in the world because he's already dead.
Right.
That's, he can act big and wild because what's the point? I'm dead already. He doesn't feel the pain really. It just bothers him a little bit, but that doesn't stop him from committing the vengeance. Here, it looks like Eric feels every shot, every stab, and it's like a grotesque healing situation. And I don't think it adds. I just think it just adds time. It doesn't add drama. It doesn't add. It
doesn't make him feel more human.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Like you said, it's just. I put it this when I talk about video games, right? And this, you have a game when you're, games have difficulties, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there's a difference between a game being difficult and a game just being annoying.
Right. Yeah. This is annoying. This is not.
Yeah. This is just. It's not. We're not learning anything from it. We're not getting any kind of emotional. We're not getting an emotional gift from it. Mm-hmm. It's just. Like you said, it's taking more frames on screen.
Right. I want to bring up something random as fuck in this movie.
Yeah.
So, there's there's a tattoo friend, a guy who runs a tattoo parlor, I guess.
Right.
He's a nothing character. I don't know how close he is to Eric or Shelley. Doesn't seem like Eric gave a shit when he died. I don't.
Yeah. I know he died so offhandedly, dude.
Yeah.
Oh,
but I guess Eric has...
Give me a gun, and now you're dead.
Yeah, Eric went to his place a couple times after he died, and, I noticed, he has, a bunch of movie posters in his room, so, okay, 8, samurai movies and whatever. Sure, why not? Yeah, alright, that's whatever. Then, I noticed there's one poster that was in the back, and it threw me off, because I was like, what? There was a poster for a movie called Crying Freeman behind Eric at one point. Crying Freeman is a adaptation of a manga and an anime. It came out in the mid to late 90s. The star of Crying Freeman? The star of Crying Freeman? Mark Dacascos.
What?
And side note, the director of Crying Freeman also did Brotherhood of the Wolf with Mark Dacascos, a badass movie. I highly recommend that movie.
An awesome, great. I love that movie. It probably doesn't hold up as well as it did back in the day,
but it's such a fun, over the top kitchen sink movie. Anyway,
yeah.
But that movie poster is behind somebody in this movie, and I'm like, you have a Mark Dacascos poster. Mark played Eric in Stairway to Heaven, the show, in the Crow TV show. That's a weird homage. And then I started seeing if there was any reference to Brandon. Was there a rapid fire poster? Is there a showdown in Little Tokyo poster? I mean, I was trying to find it. I couldn't. And I'm just standing here going, either you have a random homage to Mark Dacascos, but for some reason decided to not include Brandon. Maybe you couldn't get the rights. That's fine. But to have a reference to Mark Dacascos, who's played Eric Draven, but not have a reference to Brandon...
Or anyone else.
Is weird.
Right.
That's just weird. I also want to bring up two things from the comic that actually do make it into this film. And they're not...
The horse.
One's insignificant. The other is significant. One is the bathtub scenes, which were pretty prominent in the comics, where Eric and Shelley are talking in the bathtub. And they do try to recreate that with this film. There was at least a very intimate scene between Eric and Shelley. But yes, Earl, you're all right. They brought back the horse. and they didn't understand the meaning behind it whatsoever.
Oh man.
It's like the horse represents Eric's failure of not protecting something beautiful.
Right.
That and being unable to do so because the sequence of the comic is Eric is like in a dream sequence where he's in the train. He looks out, he sees his beautiful horse, but then this horse gets caught up in barbed wire, and Eric can't do anything to save it.
Wow, that's from the comic. I did not remember that.
Yeah.
It's like towards the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, they did misunderstand that.
And what O'Barr did in the special edition comic is that this wasn't in the original print. He always felt that like I should have returned to the horse metaphor in some fashion at the end of the story. Right. So he added this scene of Eric confronting the dead barbed wire horse before he moves on. It's a beautiful scene, wonderfully illustrated, and does sort of kind of create a thematic beginning and end to the metaphor of the horse.
Right.
That this movie didn't fucking understand.
Yeah, they used it as like a setup and a reason why Eric was in rehab, right? Like he was
weird.
He burned down the family trailer. It was
They didn't really talk about a lot of that.
Yeah, not needed.
Not needed. Yeah, it's like they look at the comic and went, "Oh, that was a big visual that they didn't do in the other movie." It's like all this movie really is what didn't they do in the last movie that we can do in this movie? So, hence Eric having short hair and his makeup looking like that. Hence, like Eric not being like a guitarist like the other film, or Eric looking like or having a Sarah or having an Albright or etc. Like this movie is like, well, we want to be our own thing, and so we gotta start coming up with new stuff, and it's like, yeah, but none of this new stuff is good. And yet you still feel the need to tether yourself to the names of Eric and Shelley.
You know, I do want to talk about the director.
Okay.
Rupert Sanders.
This is Snow White and the Huntsman, right?
Yes, and
go ahead.
Ghost in the Shell.
Oh God, that's right.
Which
Ghost in the Shell.
Kind of makes me wonder. I wonder if they ever did consider an Asian lead for this film, for the new Crow.
Well, he probably would have casted Scarlett Johansson.
He definitely would have cast. He would have cast Bill Skarsgård and said he can play Asian, and it would have been very bad. It's like the way that they probably didn't let him even try and say that. But I mean, that's what he did with Ghost in the Shell.
It's
talking about like not understanding the source material. Again, you know.
Rupert Sanders, from what I can tell, is that he makes movies that on the surface look very pretty, but are very hollow. And this movie looks at times, oh, that looks kind of neat, but it's super hollow, and I don't care. You know, like, I haven't seen Snow White and the Huntsman. I haven't seen Ghost in the Shell. But if I can judge it by his movie here, he makes movies that look very neat, but don't give you any kind of feeling.
What you know? I've seen both of those, and actually I prefer the second Snow White movie, which is just called Huntsman: Winter's War.
It's the one with just Snow White entirely.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, well, it's called Huntsman. It's in the same universe as Snow White and Huntsman.
It's a direct. Well, it's one of these real classic sequel prequels because we have to explain the Huntsman's origin and also show what happened after they defeat the Charlize Theron was the Wicked Witch or whatever they wanted to call her.
Right.
And after they defeat her, the Snow Witch takes over. So it's his origin with his sister, played by Jessica Chastain. And
oh man,
how they defeat the Snow Witch, who's played by what is her name? A very very good British actress that I can't remember.
Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt. It is like insane the big names that they got for that movie, considering how Snow White and the Huntsman kind of like flopped or whatever. Like,
it's such a weird thing because I just can't. I'm just like I was like, oh, they announced this like follow-up prequel sequel, and I went, why?
Yeah.
Who fucking did? Really?
Hemsworth and Charlize Theron came back for the sequel. Like, it's so insane.
It's oh my god. Like, I can't. Jesus Christ.
Oh my god.
I'll probably watch those at some point.
Anyway, yeah, they're kind of. I like the sequel better because it's stupider. Like, it really just leans into
it. This we know this entire movie is faff. Just like have fun with it.
Oh my god. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. No. Like Sanders just that's my vibe on. We're not seeing the other films, but just judging this one's like he makes very nice looking movies on the surface, but they're all surface level and mostly fucking hollow as shit. And it just I don't know. Like I know. We've done the show long enough that like once in a while we'll get a remake that it's like, oh, you kind of like have a reason to exist, you know. But this one doesn't, and I think this is now my time to bring up the hilarious postings of director Alex Proyas.
Hilarious. That dude is not pulling it. He's having fun. Like,
oh my god, yes. Apparently these are on his I think his Facebook. I'm gonna read some of them. Proyas posted, I love how and he's watching some guy's review and he's on YouTube and he's like, I love how enraged this critic gets. Is that a thumbs down? Maybe they could lend their DCPs to film school classes on how not to make a movie. The theater sure won't need them after next weekend. Or
oh damn.
He posts, wow, box office is a bloodbath. He then posts, and this is very funny actually, marked safe from seeing Crow 2024, which I saw the actress who played Sarah from the original film also agreed and posted it on her account.
Wow.
That's hilarious.
Adult Sarah posted that as well. And to finalize it all, the last one I will read is, I thought the remake was a cynical cash grab. Not much cash to grab, it seems.
That's so brutal. That's so brutal. Not much cash to grab, it seems. Oh.
I also want to. I've been following this a little bit, where Bill Skarsgård had said in an interview that they changed the ending a little.
Yes,
where
in order to go. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, he said he liked the ending that he saw, which made it very definitive that this is it. This movie is it. He did his Crow business. He went to hell or whatever. Mm-hmm. However, this movie wanted to pretend.
Right.
How it ends. But then the ending that all of us saw in the theaters is it kind of ends with him like walking off, kind of like he will continue to fight injustice.
Oh my god!
They definitely had that.
The Crow will return.
The Crow will return.
Definitely had that feeling of like, you'll see this guy again.
Right.
And I think the director has come out and said like, "Whoa, we didn't change anything," but I believe that they did.
Which is wild. So that implies that he thought this movie was good enough that people would want to see more of this.
Yeah.
And about that ending, what the fuck?
What even fucking happened? I honestly, like, I at some point, it was after the Crow level up thing, like making the new deal, I kind of tuned out because I was just like, I can't anymore.
Because it looks like Shelley is revived the night
died. That's right. Okay.
My note for this was, what in the Wizard of Oz bullshit?
Yeah, because that's what this is. Because I'm like, wait, Shelley lived the night they died, but then Eric is dead, but then Eric has the tattoo that he did to himself, but does that mean Rogue is dead? But none.
Yeah, did he kill all the people that he killed, or are they just still alive doing their
right?
thing?
Are they still around? Does he need to still kill them?
In that one instance, did they all just drop dead, and the city is just freaking out?
I know.
It's so.
And Kronos is the medic. That's the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, and Kronos. Oh yeah, there's a twist. Yeah. There's a twist. So, Kronos is a guy. This entire.
So I was like, yeah, is this? I was in that moment. I was like, holy shit! Not only did they completely fuck up this movie, they completely ruined the entire. It basically they did a fucked up version of a thing that we liked, and then they also said, hey, by the way, none of that happened. It was just so infuriating. It's like, why did you make us watch that if you're going to end it by saying, oh, by the way, it was a dream? It's
I hate you.
Fuck you. Like, come on. God.
I hate you so much.
There are no consequences to any of this. I don't know, man. So yeah, what about that dude, his friend? Is he dead?
Who knows?
Who knows?
I don't.
That was I walking out of that theater, I described it as the worst theater going experience that I've had in a long time. It's just the worst movie that I've seen in theaters in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And just sitting there, I was like, I hate this. It was just an active hate the whole time.
Sometimes this happens to us when we do this show, where I'm sitting in a theater alone.
Right. No, same.
Watching a movie.
There's maybe 3 other people.
Yeah, watching a movie for this specifically just for this podcast, and I'm sitting here, and I just start looking at my phone because no one's here. No, I would never do this. If there's even one person in the theater, I would never do this. But since I'm alone, fuck it. Just checking emails, just looking at a post, and then I'm like, are we still okay? I'm good. And
Justin, you take that risk because I saw this opening weekend because I was afraid it would be gone. I was like, we can't do an episode if I don't see it, and it's only going to last this weekend. There's no way.
Well, I saw it. I was literally, I watched it yesterday, so it's like.
I watched it the discount day after opening weekend.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
I don't think if we had to push for another week, I don't know how much longer that movie's going to be in theaters.
Oh no, there's no way. That theater was so empty.
It's like them and Borderlands are neck and neck on who's gonna not see these movies, you know. But yeah, I guess here's the thing, right? Going back to Obar and to the original film and to the comic, right? Knowing how much of the work that he did and is in that original movie makes that movie, like I said, means something because it's for the people that it was about, you know. The comic was about his fiance, and in a roundabout way, The Crow 1994 was about Brandon's legacy being cemented in that film. And this movie so clearly is about trying to make the series an IP again. And it shows, and it's so cynical in every approach. The fact that he doesn't even look like the Crow until the 3rd act, a common bullshit thing in current comic book movies, only adds to how much they know they just want to try to make this into a bunch of movies, you know.
You know, on top of all that, they waited for that long to give us to show, you know, the Crow whatever his final costume was going to look like. God, the whole thing with the jacket too, and I hated it. But we finally get the fight scenes, and they're just bad.
It's just so generic. Just generic. Yeah, all right. There's a lot of CGI blood, and it's cut to an operatic song, which I'm like, I don't actually care. This isn't that cool.
And they sold the film with that, I want to say, in the previews and trailers.
Ironically, much like the original film, it's the one. There's only one big action sequence they can really sell the movie on.
Right.
I guess I'll give one thought to this. Is not so much of a credit to the quality of the film, but one of the big things they try to point out is During the filming of this movie, there was a hard no guns, no active guns on set rule.
Mm-hmm. Was this after Dust or? Is that
Rust, the incident
Rust.
That's still going on, and of course, the last time of somebody dying due to an issue or something concerning a gun with a blank or a blank gun or what have you was with, sadly, Brandon's film. And to the credit of 30 years of smart professional gun handlers, prop masters, we haven't had a situation like that since then. I really want to stress that. That is a hard, very important job. That,
it's a very specific job.
Mm-hmm. It's so important. The fact that it's been 30-ish years since something as bad as that has happened since shows how important it is for someone to be on top of that job. But I also get creating more precautions, and even to the making of a remake, I even understand why they were like, let's just be really, really safe with this. And so there were no active guns. They were all either toy guns or that looked like realistic guns, they look realistic, or rubber guns, and it was all done in post, which I will admit you can tell. There's a vibe that you can tell, and probably reason why the action feels a little weightless at times. I'm not saying this is impossible and that you can't pull this off.
It is definitely an adjustment. You have to take into account all that's weight and all that stuff.
Right, and understand how to.
It's going to take a while.
It's going to take a while, and I do understand the practice, and we are at a point with technology where look, it's doable. It's doable to do this without the needs of the blank guns we were accustomed to before. I've seen some really great ideas. There's a really amazing video I saw of a guy who's a prop master, and he came up with a really cool way to do gun blast without using blanks, and it's a combination of kind of air and LED
high pressured
lights.
air. Right.
You seen this thing? It's pretty cool. It looks
no, but I'm just kind of trying to imagine what it would be. But yeah, that sounds really cool.
And I'm sure it will take some folks some time to come up with a smaller version for that for handguns, so that we can do that for a lot of so we can for more weapons of that such. I'll give them a little bit of a pat on the back. Hey, look, that's great. And honestly, that's if there's any movie you really want to take precaution of, I understand it being the remake of The Crow. That I totally understand that. Does not mean you made a good movie, but fair. I will respect that, at least in terms of how you did the production.
I respect your production.
Yes.
Not your final product.
Not your final product. God. Yeah, I don't know. That sucks. There it is.
This one really gives a bad name to remakes. We're we do this show, and we sometimes I tell people about it, and they're like remakes. Oh God, and I'm like, there's some good ones. There's
absolutely some great ones.
But this one was just nothing new.
Please rate and review Nothing New, a remake podcast on your podcast app.
You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at NothingNewPod.
You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/nothingnnew.
Nothing New, a remake podcast, is part of the Benview Network.